about safeguarding the integrity of the elections and also looking at just what are some of the risks, even from an internal point of view, that the IEC has identified and that they are specifically going to be looking at to make sure that the elections are not only safeguarded, but that the credibility is intact and that we as the people of this country can continue to trust in the services that they're offering. Of course, because it is such a hotly contested election, I think this is going to be one of those years where we see the IEC itself caught up in a lot of the politicking, disinformation, misinformation, especially if things don't go in the direction that parties would want them to go in, whatever that might be, right? Because the opportunity to be aggrieved is so high when you have the number of candidates that we have contesting for what is really a very limited number of seats. So the chairperson of the IEC, Mosotho Moepe, will be joining us for this hour. That's coming up shortly. Lots of your WhatsApp voice notes to the National Roundtable today. Lots of your calls that we couldn't take. Apologies for that. So let's just then take some of your WhatsApp voice notes, and that will lead us into the 10 o'clock conversation.
Hi. Good morning, Cathy. It's Nora in Heidelberg. Well, I am following the politicians' manifestos and all of that. And what I got so far is that I do know who I'm not voting for. I'm not voting for ANC. I'm not voting for EFF. I'm not voting for MK Party. The rest of them I'm watching closely, but mostly most of them are talking about increasing the grants, which is worrying to me because it tells me that they don't have a plan to ignite the economy, so that people can start working, to make these conditions good for the economy to thrive. So now when they're going to increase grants, is that their promise? That means that people are going to be dependent on the state for their basic needs, and that is scary, that is worrying. So I don't really know at the moment. I'll just have to keep watching until I decide. Thanks, have a fantastic day. Cheers, bye.
Morning, Cathy. This is Cathy. For me, I have a big problem with black people. We are the most people who talks too much. We complain about everything. But when you listen to these listeners coming and telling you they don't want to vote anything, they don't see who they voted for, they are the biggest complainers. They talk too much when the things are not going well in this country. We are the biggest problem. If you look at white people, they vote. White people, they vote. Doesn't matter what they vote for. They vote those people. And as we only got the chance to vote 30 years ago, and we're already bragging. White people have been voting since they were born. But they're still voting because they know voting means a lot. And I'm very disappointed with our people. They are the biggest complainers, but they don't want to vote. For me, I will vote. I will definitely vote till the day I die. Any party that sings a land, I'll vote for that party.
Cathy, good morning. Sello from Zakani. Hey, Cathy. All parties are trying to come up with tricks. But truthfully speaking, I see the DA bringing some change in this country. Even though we might say racism, the land issue, this and that, but at the end of the day, ICTA bring bread and butter on the table for most of us. And remembering that they're in a pact with other parties. It seems like most people don't understand the pact thing. The pact thing binds them on most things that we need as the nation. So,
Thank you. Hi, Cathy. None of them, the manifestos, talk about constitutional change. This country needs a new constitution if it is to address a number of challenges facing it, including violent crime. Bye. Anonymous.
Good morning, Sis Kathy and the listeners. This is Shuma Samuels. I will definitely vote for Action SA nationally and Rise Mzansi provincially. I just want to see the ANC being removed in Gauteng and KZN, losing power and money, going down. Mapisa Ngakula, she must just go to the police station and hand herself today. I thank you.
All right, thanks for those WhatsApp voice notes. 12 after 10 o'clock. Let me welcome onto the show the chairperson of the Independent Electoral Commission, Mosotho Moepya, as we take a look at safeguarding the integrity of the elections. Mr. Moepya, good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners. I think you're a prophet. One day I might be a prophet.
I was about to say, I think I've just conferred an honorary doctorate there. Apologies for that. You see, I wish you well. I wish you only good things.
And I'm so grateful.
So, before we get into the nitty-gritties, right, of just the issues around safeguarding the elections, because there are a number of them that we will get to talk about within this hour. Yeah. But just broadly, we're under 2 months away from the elections. Correct. Obviously, the IEC is busier than it has ever been, or as busy as it gets during the election cycle. What's the general mood at the IEC right now? The general feeling of preparedness and dealing just sort of with the logistics of making sure that you're meeting your deadlines and timeframes as we get really into this election?
You know, Cathy, in this building, as I walk, as I greet people, as I talk to people, there's a pervasive sense of purpose. People are resolved. This is our lot. We have the 29th of May to deal with. We have to do the best we can do, and everyone is focused. We have a common enemy, that is the 29th of May, so to speak, and we all want to deal with that in the best way that we can, and we have to be victorious over it.
There's no sense of being overwhelmed, that there's a lot to do. And I guess also just the fact that we had that breach coming internally from the IEC, that in and of itself does have the opportunity to create a sense of anxiety, worry about what comes next.
You know, there are things that you prepare for and they never happen. And so you say I had prepared for these things, but because they never happened, you don't know how well prepared you were. We have a crisis management strategy at the commission for things like the one that happened, and in truth, it should never have happened, but it has happened, and for us the issue was, how do we deal with it now that it has happened? And when I look back at what we have done to mitigate that, I'm satisfied that it's not in vain that we think of the strategies and we deal with them. It's a sad chapter of the work, of our work this year, and been a long period of time that we've been doing this work. But you have seen how openly we have handled the matter, how swiftly we have moved, how we have complied with our duty in law to deal with the unauthorized issue of information and the actions we have taken. And the matter is gone. We were resolved that we need to carry you into our confidence and deal with the matter, painful as it was for us.
We've talked about how this election is going to be the most contested because, well, obviously, that speaks for itself. Does that automatically mean that the IEC is going to be facing the greatest level of scrutiny around its processes, including also the administration of the election, than ever before, because we have so many individuals and parties that have a vested interest in the election and in the outcome of the election?
It is so, Cathy, I'm afraid. If you compare elections one after the other, you get to see how every one of them changes in focus, in appreciation, in understanding. The 2024 national and provincial elections are in many ways going to be very difficult and tricky. This is so because, one, we have the highest number of political parties contesting the elections. Second, there has been a change in that we have introduced in our electoral system independent candidates, following the Constitutional Court matter in the New Nation Movement case. And so there are many new developments in the work that we do. But across the world, democracy has been under constant scrutiny. There are many people that say democracy is facing headwinds. It appears to be so, but research actually indicates that democracy is being purified and perfected. And we are not going to be excluded from that. We are going to face the fire in the purification process, and we are going to have to rise above petty little things that we can complain about, and stand firm and do the work that we are called to do at a time such as this.
As we continue the conversation then, one of the things I want you to reflect on for us when we come back from the break is to talk about the risks that you believe the IEC is facing for this election in particular. We've heard, some of the commentary. There's some political parties that talk about, the chaos that would unfold if certain individuals are not allowed to run. There are some political parties that are already casting aspersions on the credibility of the IEC to administer the election and questioning, the relationship between the IEC and the ANC. And all of this, much of it is just speculative, right? And easy for us to dismiss it, but I want to know from the IEC, how are you intentionally dealing and responding to some of these matters? Because ultimately, these are also the issues that have the opportunity of influencing perceptions, and sometimes that perception is what we need to deal with when we want to ensure that trust is not eroded. So we'll continue the conversation with Mosotho Moebea, the chairperson of the IEC, in a moment.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Our rugby correspondent, Khotsoselo, that key match at the top of the table. The Bulls obviously very, very much second best against Leinster. They just didn't put it together at all. But we always knew this was going to be a tough game, and indeed you predicted as such when we spoke about it last week.
100%, Michael. I think Leinster has been a team that's been a little bit unlucky in the past 2 seasons. They've been trophyless, and I think that's one of the main reasons why they brought in Jacques Nienaber from the Springboks as their head coach. I mean, Jacques Nienaber has won 2 World Cups with the Springboks, and I think they needed a winning formula. It hasn't been a case of Leinster not being able to put together a team that can trouble a lot of sides in terms of scoring points.
Top Sport on SAFM. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Citizens Corner today, we're talking about safeguarding the integrity of the elections with the chairperson of the IEC, Mosotho Moepya. So, Ntate Moepya, let's talk about the risks that the IEC has identified for this election. What are those risks?
Well, the first one, it's litigation. Litigation has been very significant in modern elections in South Africa. In this year or this elections, we have seen even the process of lawmaking. You know, the passage of the Electoral Amendment Act was a process that went through litigation to the very end. We have seen now with the Electoral Matters Amendment Act, the consequential amendments that were made following the passage of the Electoral Amendment Act. As recently as a month ago, the court still has the Constitutional Court has had to deal with these matters, and so that is a big thing. This week, Cathy, on Friday alone, we will be in the Electoral Court on 5 matters, 5 different matters. This, if you came to us in 1999, in 2004, would probably have had 8 or 10 cases in that year. This week alone, there are 8 cases that are before us that we're going to look at, and 5 of those are going to be on court on Friday. So this is a big area. We don't mind matters going to court, but you need stability at a point when you have resolved all the issues and are now dealing with an election. And that's why, for us, it's a risk, but one that we have to manage nonetheless. We have been, we are grateful that we have been very successful in the courts. I don't say that arrogantly. I want to say it with the greatest of humility, because we have to apply our minds very carefully. So that risk exists. The second one...
Sorry, before you go on, just on this issue of litigation, because it could be 2 ways, right? And I'm keen to hear your view. Is the increased litigation due to contesting of processes of the IEC, that you have more political parties or political players that are questioning the processes of the IEC? Or is it because there has been perhaps, I don't want to say bypassing of processes within the IEC that then has created this room for you to be challenged on these matters?
Well, it's a perception of that, but where we say we don't agree with the other party, on the views they hold. We then seek alternative ways of resolving that, and we don't find. And eventually we say, you know what? Let's agree to disagree. Let's find, another institution that is meant to help us to deal with this matter, and we go to court. It is not a thing we argue about whether it's this process or that process. It can be anything. It can be someone that says, I've had a challenge complying with this. please understand and condone it, and we say we don't have that authority in law, and they take us to court. To give you an example, in the last 3 weeks, we have been to court with three, we matters have arisen with three major parties, or with three parties. You would recall the ANC took us to court on the MK matter. The DA was in court with us on overseas voting. There's an appeal at the electoral court with MK. When you go with the one, sometimes others think, they must take you to court because you're fighting with another. But the commission has been taken to court by almost every party, or we have taken almost every party to court. And it doesn't, for me, it is a healthy thing to do. When we agree with a party today, it doesn't mean we are always going to agree with that. And in part, I'm dealing with the issue raised earlier to say people think, the ANC and us are hard to separate. I vehemently deny that. I think we have demonstrated that we are independent. Where a party is right, it's right in law, and we agree with them. It doesn't mean that we're in the same thing. Tomorrow we could be disagreed, and we could be up against them, and so on and so forth. And we don't make enemies. We simply go and clarify issues we have disagreement on.
Fair enough. So that's then the first risk, the issue of litigation. What's next on the list?
South Africa has never, in my short memory of our democracy, been to the point where we are, where the law is amended and finally settled just a few weeks before an election. This is the first election where we are at that point, and it follows the litigation risk I put to you before. It is precisely because of that, in part, that we are where we are. It is a risk. We have anticipated that. We are managing it, but there is no room for maneuver in that area. We will continue to look at that. We were clear, as you would recall, when we went to the Constitutional Court, we always said, for us, we need time to implement the decisions, whatever decisions that may be determined through a court action to put them into our implementation plans.
Sure. So just clarify for me then, all of these changes in legislation that of course now have paved a way for independent candidates to contest the election, in what way has that presented a risk for the IEC?
The legislation, there are two pieces of legislation, Cathy, that we are talking about, and I think it's important to answer your question to clarify that. We first had the legislation that brought them into the contestation, and that legislation was the Electoral Amendment Act. That was passed last year in April. Following that, was the Electoral Matters Amendment Act, or bill, that has now been passed by Parliament and the National Council of Provinces. What we now need to have is that signed in law. These are the consequential amendments that we now need to put in place following the amendment of the initial law, the Electoral Amendment Act. And these are dealing with, for example, the slots that they will have on public election broadcast, the independents will have. The issue of, getting them to have party agents and others in stations, their agents in stations, a whole lot of things, how they participate in meetings that we convene between ourselves and our contestants. Those are the things that we're now are now being passed, and that it's very late in the day. But we've had to anticipate them because once the initial legislation was passed, it was clear these are the other things that we needed to do.
All right. We're going to continue the conversation with the chairperson of the IEC, Mosotho Moepya, in a moment. It's time now for the latest news headlines.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, and ANC councillor in the Nkomazi local municipality in Mpumalanga has been gunned down. Police have identified him as 35-year-old Thabo Ngwenya. Residents of Desai in Mariannhill in Durban say the suspects who were killed in a shootout with police this morning have been terrorizing them for years. The 9 suspects were wanted in connection with a series of violent crimes. And some residents of Lehigh Phase 2 near Orange Farm south of Johannesburg are rebuilding their homes after the Red Ants demolished them on Thursday last week. The structures were built on private land. I'll have details on these and other stories at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 84 to the dollar, 23 rand 68 to the pound, and 20 rand 29 to the euro. Markets in Asia closed in mixed terrain. The JSE has extended losses in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are slightly higher this hour. Gold is trading at $2,268. Platinum, $914 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $89.75 a barrel.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
You're listening to The Talking Point. We are looking at safeguarding the integrity of the elections for Citizens Corner today. Mosotho Moepya is the chairperson of the IEC. And of course, I'll be taking your calls in a moment. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. And on the WhatsApp voice note line, you can send those through on 0614 104 107. I know we've got quite a number of listeners that want to engage Mr. Moepya. So I'm going to ask that we all please try and keep our questions short and sweet to the point, so that we can get through as many people as possible. So, Mr. Moepya, just on this issue of then the late enactment in the day of the legislation, do you foresee a situation where political parties can, on the eve of the election, then cry foul and say, but we weren't given opportunity to campaign. We weren't given opportunity to get, let's say, airtime, whether it's on public platforms or private platforms, because of some of these delays? I
hope not. We have engaged, Cathy, we have engaged all parties, those that are represented and those that are unrepresented. We have been in constant communication with them and updating them. And in fact, talking about these specific challenges, you call them risks. There are more challenges, I think, for us, and seeing how best we deal with them. As I've indicated to you, we've had to anticipate what would happen, because it's evident that once independents are there, they would need to have a public election broadcast, and how then ICASA and others could engage with them. And so we have done what we can do. And I guess there's a lot more we need to do, and we will do. But I'm just highlighting the fact that we've never been to a point where so close to an election we work with this as givens. We've had issues settled before the time. We have to embrace this, and we have to still manage in spite of the challenges.
What else is on your list?
Well, there's a higher level of in that we now have 3 ballots and not 2. There's an enormous amount of work we need to put out in terms of educating, informing on the 3 ballots and how they're going to work. It's not something we have done, but also the higher level of contestation means that a voter may take longer in voting ordinarily, in spite of the fact that the third ballot exists, the ballot is longer. And so the amount of time a voter may take in the voting station, or is most likely to take in a voting station, is going to be much longer than it has been in the past. And so we are anticipating that. We're increasing the level of staff in voting station. We're bringing in people that will help count because that is a clear area of challenge ordinarily. Now that we have an added complication, we can anticipate that even better.
One of the things that has historically been an issue, Mr. Moepa, is especially once voting is done and dusted and we begin with vote counting, where you will find with the management of the actual the votes and the moving of boxes from one place to another, they've historically been, a few issues. Of course, these are issues that political parties will bring up through the party liaison committees, and they've historically been dealt with. But what is the threat that having such challenges may pose in this election? So, for instance, if you find, let's say, if you find ballots, strewn across a stream somewhere in Alex, as we've seen in another election, the implications of that in this election, do you think that it will have greater implications? And how does the INC ensure that some of these things that have happened before don't happen again?
And we take meticulous measures to mitigate against risks we know, especially those that have happened. But Cathy, I have never seen a perfect election anywhere in the world, and I must, the past 20 years at least, this has been my preoccupation, looking at this work and following it throughout the world. The big issue in elections is scale and how you manage that. We simply cannot afford to have an election where ballots strewn across, as you say, it's a general rule. We must anticipate that it shouldn't happen, but where it happens, we must find a way to deal with it quickly. And I think for me it's important. It's not to say that we prepare that these things don't happen, but it's like saying, it'll be a perfect day, and then there's a storm in some places in the country. We have to anticipate that when that storm occurs, what are the measures we put in place to safeguard the voting process, in that area where there's a storm, and to deal with the voting process in the best way possible. These are not easy things to do. But let me tell you, that's the level of detail at which we work. We will work with the Weather Bureau, we will work with disaster management, everyone, so that we are better prepared on election day to deal with it. And that's the nature of the work that the IC does.
And in terms of dealing with accusations of election rigging, that this idea that there are political parties who can, I don't know whether they can buy votes or whether they can get ballots secured and add them to the tally on the day of elections. How do you deal with that? Because again, if you listen to some of the narratives that are coming out of some political parties, there certainly is an insinuation that these elections can be rigged.
Cathy, in South Africa, I say it, this is the strongest way I can say it. You will never be able to rig elections in this country. No one will. Not us at the Commission, not someone out there. To do it, you need a whole lot of other people to help you. And not people only from your party or that are siding with you. It'll be people from across the political spectrum. And I don't know if that is possible. A party agent of the DA, of the ANC, of the EFF, of the Inkatha Freedom Party, of Action SA, you can call them all. that they will agree at a particular voting station that in this station it's a candidate from this party that we're going to, and the presiding officer, and agree all of them to do that. You see, that is the level of collusion you would need. It's not possible.
All right, we're in conversation with Mosotho Mieba, the chairperson of the IEC. I'm taking your calls now. Let me kick it off in Polokwane. Sammy, good morning.
Good morning, Casey.
Yes.
When it's all said and I hope you will. When it's all said and done, I don't believe your guest, because there's a video that's circulating. It dates back to the 2021 elections. There's a Kumbi that's transporting IEC ballot boxes. It's driven by ANC members. They are wearing ANC T-shirts. So I'd like to know from your guest, how did that happen? How did it happen that a Kumbi that's transporting ballot boxes from IEC is being driven by people wearing ANC T-shirts? And what's being done about it? I'll forward the video to you on X, and I'll take them as well. I need answers. What's being done and who's being held accountable? I don't want him to hear him saying that I don't know anything about it. No, I want to know, how did it happen? Who's being held accountable? We need answers.
Yes, Sammy, I'm not aware of the video you're talking about. Do you know in which province it was taken?
I'm not sure which video it was taken, but it's there. It's a video. They cannot say it was doctored. You can see when the video is being doctored. That video is there. It's legit.
Okay.
So I'll send it to you. I'll take them as well. We need answers. And we need to know who's being held accountable. Why is it that a Kumbi from IEC is being driven by ANC members?
Okay. Sammy, thanks for calling in with that issue out in Polokwane. Skosana, you're in Ikageng. Good morning.
Hello.
Yes.
Rona,
Skosana, let's go straight into it.
Okay. Look, man, you remember last time I told you that this issue of independence is just a waste of time. And now it's only two, I think, that they have registered as independent. But the issue is one. Last time I heard one of the IEC officials saying about the quota that if then for you to qualify as an independent to have a seat, you must have equal number of voters like the party that contest in the whole country, vis-a-vis the independent who is contesting at a district or a province level. I think at some stage they are going to find themselves at the court of law because of it doesn't give a sort of fairness. One other issue is...
Are you talking about the regional ballots, Kosana?
Yes, the regional ballot.
Okay.
For instance, you are an independent, you are contesting a regional ballot. You are just like contesting in your region, like in your province. They say it's a regional, but it's a provincial kind of a thing. You are not contesting in other provinces. But when it comes to a seat allocations, you are just going to pay the very same price like the political parties. If for you to have a seat at the National Assembly as an independent, if the party supposed to have a 40,000 votes, normally it's 40,000. You as an independent who contested in a small area, you're supposed to have the very same 40,000 votes. It's equal. I think in my case, it's unfair. And then also, I want to highlight the issue of the staff. What makes the integrity of the election is it's voters' roll, is the staff, is the ballot paper. It's a lot of things. But you find the very same IEC staff. Last time there was another one who saying, of course he was making an example, that normally for you to secure a seat in the National Assembly, you need to have a 60,000 votes. It has never happened, even during Mandela's time. If you are saying you should have a 60,000 votes, that simply means 24,000 people they are going to vote, of which we have never even crossed 24 million.
Okay.
We have never even reached 20 million for that person to say, for you to secure a seat, you need to have a 60 votes. And then...
Okay, Skosana, I'm going to have to leave it there with you. I think you've raised 3 issues already. Mr. Miepe, let me give you a chance to respond before I bring in more callers.
Yes, thank you so much, Cathy, and I appreciate both Sami and Dr. Skosana. Sami is raising an issue you would know, Cathy, and the listeners would know this. We are the first ones to raise issues of, where something irregular is in an election. I'm not aware of the instance where a Kumbi with IEC materials is with ANC people and things like that. But let me say this, which I have said before, and we have proven many, many times over. There are many fake videos that are made, and they damage the reputation of our country, let alone just the IEC, where fake materials are issued, and we are painted with it. I'm not saying that irregular things don't happen. They don't happen because we want them to happen. And where we find them, Cathy, we have never been indecisive. We have removed people from their posts on the spot. We have pursued them in the court of law, and there are people that have been sentenced where wrongdoing has been found. We condemn it where it happens. So the allegation that we work with certain parties is devoid of the truth. And we as the IEC are clear about that, not in our name. And where we get to know it, we deal with it. One swallow doesn't make a summer. If it happens, or it has happened, and I'm not saying so because I admit I don't know about the situation as the gentleman semi-indicated to you. You need answers. Our answer is pretty simple. It doesn't happen with our permission, and where it does, like any criminal activity, we deal with it robustly. With regard to the issues raised by Dr. Skosana, I think some of those he himself is a little confused about them. Let me help. What has happened is that the independent candidates, both for the regions and for the provinces, only require 1,000 signatures. I don't know where why he thinks it's 60,000, another large number. It's simple. It's 1,000. But they need the same amount of votes that a party will need to get a seat. I hope I'm clear. If in Limpopo, in the Limpopo provincial legislature, a seat requires 28,000 votes for a candidate or a party, an independent can't get that seat at 14,000. There is no such discounting. There is favorable dispensation for an independent in relation to the number of supporters or signatures they need. It's 1,000. A party would need 15% of the quota of the seats in the previous election. A party will pay a higher deposit than an independent will do. But when it comes to the actual votes that from which you get a seat, they're equal. That is what the law is today. It's not these things that are being said. They are being disadvantaged. They need, the same as national parties and so on and so forth. It's not true.
All right, we're going to continue the conversation in a moment. I'll also, of course, continue to take more of your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes.
Unforgettable happens when the young and the old know they can surf, snorkel, fish, enjoy whale watching, and end the day with sundowners Neshisanyama. KwaZulu-Natal is a jewel waiting to happen. Ziyakhipha with hiking, horse riding, biking, ziplining, and mountain biking adventures waiting for the fearless and the bold. Unforgettable happens here. Zwagala. Brought to you by Tourism KwaZulu-Natal.
Aston Villa have found comfort on the top half and they want maximum points to retain their decent position.
Put it back, and this time, Daniolo is on! The equaliser belongs to Aston Villa!
Yet the Bees want to cause havoc and deprive the Villains by registering an away victory.
Tried one of them in the first half, he's finished it in the second, and Brentford have turned this round.
This is the Premier League. Catch the exciting clash between Aston Villa FC and Brentford FC on Saturday, 6 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
We were in conversation with the chairperson of the IEC, Mosotho Moepea. We're talking about safeguarding the integrity of the elections and really dealing with some of the issues that often come up when it comes to credibility and integrity. So I'm still taking your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes. Here's an interesting one on the issue of objections and litigations. We're going to play the voice note. We'll give Mr. Moepea an opportunity to respond on the other side.
Hi, Cathy. Thanks to the chairperson of IEC. Sir, you're talking about litigations. I think me and you we're still going for courts because I raised an objection for the individual called Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa not to be included on the candidate list, and I listed the reasons why I was objecting, and I didn't get any correspondence from IEC. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Moepea?
I am not aware of that objection from the caller. I'm quite happy for us. We have a facility, Cathy, where all of these objections have gone into, and I can tell you we have emptied that email address.
Do you respond to everyone that sends through objections?
Yes, we do. We are required to do so by law, and we have done so.
Okay. Well, we're going to ask the listener, if you've got evidence of what you're saying, send it to us on WhatsApp. Just take pictures of the emails that you have sent, email addresses, and we'll follow up on that issue. Stephen, you're in Soweto. Good morning.
Morning, Cathy. It's my clear.
Yes, Stephen, we can hear what you're saying. The line isn't great, but go ahead.
Yes, I'm so disappointed. Let me try and get a better spot. Is it better now?
Yes, just go ahead, Stephen.
Yes. MK Party was a liberation army of the ANC. APLA was the PAC. Azanda was under ZAPO. And then there were TBVC states. And then there was actually a vet for if I'm not wrong. So I'm looking at this the stability in South Africa. Should all these other parties and the TBV states form parties like the MK party? How will the stability of South Africa looks like? I mean, even from the outside world, the economists, when they look at South Africa, will they see it as an inviting a destination for any economic growth? Thank you.
Okay, Stephen out in Soweto, he's asking about military-based parties, paramilitary organizations that evolve into parties and the impact that this has for stability in the country.
Well, Cathy, I think for us the law is clear on who must be registered as a party, and what happens, for us to register them. And if such a party does not operate like a party in a democracy, in a modern democracy, how they get to be deregistered, those things are very clear. We have not been to that position. But should we need to be, or should we be placed in that position? I think the law is clear. A party that stops functioning as a political party can no longer be kept on the register of political parties, and we'll follow the law in that instance. It's not very difficult to deal with. It's at the moment a thing that is it's an abstract perhaps, but if in reality it happens, the law is clear. It shouldn't be difficult to deal with it.
One of the things you've had to do is already issue statements warning around the conduct of political parties. In particular, some of the statements that were made by the MK parties who were threatening violence, threatening attacks if the former President Jacob Zuma is kept off the ballot, or even if the party was not allowed to contest. How seriously do you take these threats as the IEC, and are you preparing for the risks that may come with, especially now that you've taken a decision that the former president cannot be on the ballot paper?
Yes, we do. Cathy, many of the stakeholders we deal with sometimes comment or report things in the media without thinking a lot about it. We as the Commission have over the years come to a position where we think it's important to reflect on these things very carefully. The MK party, for example, I know everyone is apprehensive about what they have said. We have been engaging with them, and our engagements will be known because we don't. When we do that, and when we think these are matters that are serious, we don't really do it through the media. We do it with the party. We follow the law, and once we have come to a determination, we deal with that matter very openly, that everybody will know. And so I'm saying to you that there is nothing we do not deal with. There's very little that escapes us, if at all. The MK party, there is work we are doing with them, and they know it, we know it, and we will let all of you know when we are ready to let you know.
What does it take for a party to be deregistered because they have violated the code of conduct, and do we see that happening often as of course campaigning ramps up?
It hasn't happened in our country yet, but increasingly things that have not happened are now happening. You will recall that we now have a situation where 2 days before an election, we once had a candidate in a general election removed by order of the court. We had gone to court and say, "Court, this is what we have found in the conduct of this person, and we do want the harshest sentence to be issued in this instance." And the court was with us. They removed that candidate from the ballot, from that election. They were still on the ballot, but anyone that voted for them, it didn't count. We did publicize it. It hasn't happened that a political party would be removed. But there are provisions in law in the same way that there are provisions for the individual candidate that was removed. And should a party get to the point where they have violated that, clearly we will go to court and we will stand on our word and say, "Court, this is the sentence the order we want you to issue." And if the court is with us, such a possibility could become a reality.
All right. Unfortunately, that's all that we have time for today. Mosotho Miapia is the chairperson of the IEC. It's just after 11 o'clock. Time for your latest news update.
In our top stories, Mpumalanga ANC ward councillor gunned down and KZN police commended for killing of suspects. Good morning. And ANC councillor in the Nkomazi local municipality in Mpumalanga has been gunned down. Police have identified him as 35-year-old Thabo Ngwenya. 4 armed suspects attacked him in Mangweni last night. The suspects fled with his car and cell phones after the incident. The provincial police spokesperson Donald Mhluli.
4 armed suspects who were wearing parade gloves stormed into the house in the evening of Tuesday at a place called Mangweni near Nkomati Port. The man was then shot and the wife was assaulted. It is also reported that they robbed them of cell phones and also a charcoal buggy, a GD6 Toyota buggy, then fled the scene. They have not yet been arrested. However, a 72-hour activation plan has been put in place.
The Institute for Local Government Management of South Africa has called on the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department to allow municipalities to provide municipal managers with at least 1 bodyguard each. This comes after an incident in the Mhlathuze local municipality in KwaZulu-Natal last week. Ntokozo Mthembu, the bodyguard of the Mayor Xolani Ngwezi, allegedly gunned down Simo Zulu, the bodyguard of the municipal manager. The Institute's president Maxim Billy says business owners desperately seeking tenders are increasingly threatening municipal managers.
This is our call for the last 7 years to the Minister of Culture. The environment for us as municipal managers or senior managers is not conducive. Decisions that we take time to time, maybe regarding procurement, will invite unnecessary incidents in municipalities. We are making this call because we have buried a number of members of the Institute, municipal managers, CFOs, and other senior managers.
Residents of Desai in Marion Hill in Durban say the suspects who were killed in a shootout with police this morning have been terrorizing them for years. The 9 suspects were wanted in connection with a series of violent crimes. Residents Caroline Kisaki and Alfina Gumbi say the crime levels have been so high that some people have abandoned their homes.
There is high rate of crime here and people have abandoned their homes due to the crime. Sometimes we don't sleep due to the noise of guns. I'm also a victim of this crime as my husband was severely beaten and all his belongings were taken away by the criminals. The rate of crime here is frightening and we live under fear. Many people have left their homes and I must applaud the police for a job well done.
Some residents of Lehigh Phase 2 near Orange Farm south of Johannesburg are rebuilding their homes after the red ants demolished them on Thursday last week. The structures were built on private land. Scores of residents, mostly women and children, were left homeless. One of the affected residents has expressed frustration.
I did not have a choice. They destroyed my house. I was sleeping without a roof over my head for several days. Should they come back, they might as well kill me because I no longer have power to fight.
Further afield, and finally, there have been calls in Britain for London to stop selling arms to Israel following the killing of 7 aid workers in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. The Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he was appalled by the Israeli attack. The BBC's Graham Satchell reports.
World Central Kitchen was providing vital food aid in Gaza, supplying millions of meals. The consequences of the attack will be felt here first. The charity has paused its operations, putting immediate stress on an already desperate situation. There has been global condemnation. America described the attack as an outrage. Britain said the deaths were completely unacceptable. Australia has demanded accountability. Pressure is growing at home and abroad. But so far, the Israeli government has been impervious to calls for a ceasefire and is determined to continue its fight against Hamas.
Recapping the top story, an ANC councillor in the Nkomazi local municipality in Mpumalanga has been gunned down. Police have identified him as 35-year-old Thabo Ngwenya. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Saturday nights on S3 are about to get dramatic.
Tune into The Player at 9:30 p.m. and catch Wesley Snipes as a pit boss as he and his team gamble on the ability of security expert Philip Winchester to stop some of the biggest crimes imaginable from playing out. Can he take them down from the inside and get revenge for the death of his wife? Or is it true what they say? The house always wins. Channel your best drama with The Player, Saturdays at 9:30 p.m. only on
Masanda wanna trust their creativity to ensure Yanga gets nothing from Mzansi's capital city. But the gentlemen from the east want to leave Kabuyelo in tears. This is the second leg quarterfinal battle of the CAF Champions League. Experience Africa's beautiful game. Mamelodi Sundowns versus Young Africans on Friday, 5 April at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Good morning, Cathy. This is Salim from Durban. We appreciate your show and the insight that you bring in. But this morning was a very touching speech by a very powerful lady, Professor Fatima Mir. The whole Mir family were involved in the struggle, Farouk Mir, Ismail Mir, and one, would know it was a very difficult time during apartheid, and people were not free, people couldn't move freely, they couldn't speak freely, there was oppression, there was, detention without trial, and it was those dark days, and Fatima Mir really worked hard with the community, with the underprivileged and community, and really done a lot. It was a very touching talk by Professor Fatima Mir, and it was such a good opening for the morning.
Good morning, Cathy. You are speaking to Rantwa here in Kariega, Unique. Cathy, I hear you mention this Freedom Month here in South Africa, April. Cathy, there is no freedom without no land. There's no freedom without not participating in the economy and be economically free. There's no such freedom in South Africa. The freedom is enjoyed by the elite and those minority, the white minority in South Africa. Thank you. From Rantwa here in the Eastern Cape, Kariega. Goodbye. Bye.
Good morning, Cathy. Hope you're well. The problem with the political leaders in South Africa is that they all think they're above the law. Their images are more important than the rights of the people. And like Jacob Zuma, just had to follow the instructions of the Constitutional Court and be there at a certain time, make representation, and he wouldn't have had a criminal record. So he had free will, and look where it's got him. Same with the Speaker of Parliament. Just go to the police station, be processed, and then go home. No, she goes the legal route. So you know what? What they get is all a result of their own actions. They must take the consequences.
Morning, Cathy. For me, it's never really been a tough decision to make, deciding on which party to vote for, because at the end of the day, all these parties are lying in their manifestos. They are just selling us a dream. So personally, the only dream that I entertain, or the lie that I entertain, is the return of land. If a person says that is going to return the land to the people who were dispossessed, then that person always wins my heart, because I still do want the land, and I do not care what anyone says. As a black African, I still need the land. So I will vote for Azapo, ATM, MK, or whatever party, as long as it still talks about the land. The rest, they can lie to themselves. I do not really care.
Hi, Cathy. I'm a 30-year-old man, tertiary education, but I just haven't found myself in this life thing, the restrictions with job opportunities and also emancipating when you get an entry-level job. It's just been, so difficult. So I know where I am in the process of voting. I'm in the process of electing. I've decided that I'm at the point where I need to be electing a new government because the current government does not serve my needs, does not serve that of my kids, and would not serve it in future. So I've decided I'm gonna be voting for a new government on the 29th of May.
All right. Thank you all for those WhatsApp voice notes that you've been sending through to the show. It's the final hour of the talking point for the day, and the final conversation that we'll have is looking really at the situation around the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, and her imminent arrest, right? Or should we say handing over? Because if she doesn't hand herself over to police to be processed, what we know is that she will be arrested, especially as set out in the court arguments that we've heard in the last week or so. Joining us for this conversation is Benedict Phiri. He's a legal analyst. Benedict, good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to the listeners.
Karam Singh is the Executive Director at Corruption Watch. Karam, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to the listeners.
I'm going to borrow from something that the chairperson of the IEC, Mosotumieba, said in our conversation in the last couple of minutes, that there are many things that we don't anticipate in this country and many things that have not happened. But more and more we come accustomed to the fact that these things can happen in South Africa. And some of them are in the realm of the extraordinary. It feels, though, that because we have been sensitized to all of these extreme events in different ways, that often when something really big happens, we now no longer treat it as being big because it's just in the course of action. So we have the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, that is now facing imminent arrest if she doesn't hand herself over, after having failed in her bid to interdict any potential arrest by the prosecuting authorities. Am I wrong to say that this really is extraordinary in and of itself? Benedict?
Cathy, I think you're absolutely correct. It is extraordinary in and of itself. The charges she would be facing stem from her role as a minister, and as a Speaker of Parliament. You'd expect that she'd be aware that interdicting an arrest is quite an extraordinary thing, given the powers that the NPA have to secure the attendance of anybody that's reasonably suspected of a crime at a court. And in this particular instance, obviously, they'd given her quite some leeway. But absolutely, it's very extraordinary, Cathy, in all respects, and the context in which it happens.
One doesn't get the sense of that. It seems to be just another day, that business is continuing as usual.
Yes, you said sensitized, Cathy, in your introduction, and I guess the term really is that we've become desensitized, unfortunately, and this is always the kind of challenge now, and I think we felt this kind of fatigue in the later years of the testimonies at the Zondo Commission, that it was just more of the same, and it becomes difficult for people to kind of process the kind of moral outrage that they would expect to feel, because the levels of trust have dropped so significantly that we actually not that surprised when our leaders find themselves embroiled in these types of scandals. I mentioned the Zondo Commission. We had years of testimony. We then had a new administration that came in that said, we're going to turn the corner. We're going to have a zero tolerance approach. We an anti-corruption administration. but that hasn't been borne out in practice. We had the COVID scandal, and this scandal, or at least the allegations involving the speaker, go back in time. So, there's so many issues from the recent past and going back further that have never been dealt with. We have an original arms deal itself that was never dealt with in terms of real accountability. So it's sad that the levels of trust are so low and that there is this kind of cynicism and despondency, but I suppose it's not completely to be unexpected.
Benedict, when we look at the ruling that was delivered yesterday by Judge Sulet Pottrell, I think, there is a sense of sobriety that the law brings into this conversation, because when we look at how she described the actions of the speaker, just in bringing this matter, saying that it was irrational, it was unreasonable, that there was an expectation that the courts would really be able to make a decision and preside over a space that is governed by statutory bodies who have a statutory responsibility. So, it seems that Judge Pottrell herself was somewhat dumbfounded by the judgment, in her judgment, by the expectation and what the speaker was asking the courts to do.
I think so, Cathy, and I think, you've adequately sort of described how Judge Pottrell saw the application. And I think for some of us in the profession, when we saw that the thrust of the argument really for Ms. Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula was, her standing in society, really, it was shocking because, that hits at issues of equality. It speaks to the entitlement, perhaps, that some people believe they are entitled to be above the law in some instances because of the positions they occupy. And it was shocking to see that played out in the context of court arguments that, most lawyers would know would not really stand a chance, given, as you said, the statutory framework and the powers that are given to these statutory bodies to exercise their functions, and the fact that a court wouldn't necessarily be able to encroach on that on the reasons that Ms. Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula had given. To begin with, the issue of urgency was never on the table. And the fact that the court was approached on an urgent basis when there were never any factors that could indicate that there would be a situation where Ms. Nqakula would not find substantive redress if she wasn't heard by a court. Before you even went to the merits, that was going to be a big problem and a tried and tested and well understood thing for most legal practitioners. So it was shocking, but I think the court dealt with it adequately. The matter was dealt with by the judge in a very forthright manner, and I think it's quite clear what people's rights are if they ever find themselves in a position like Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. And I think there will be more coming, given what we know has been happening in the past and the fact that there still hasn't been the levels of accountability that we would expect to see, given what we've seen from the Zondo Commission, etc.
The question of accountability, Karam, is such a big one, because we have really gone through an evolution of this conversation from 2018, 2019, when the former president Jacob Zuma is, he resigns from office under duress from his party due to what is then termed state capture. What we know now are the details of what state capture entailed, what it meant. But how people respond to the conversation today is not what it was 5 or even 7 years ago, because we have seen what looks like a trail of unaccountability, that despite the fact that there are all of these accusations of wrongdoing, high-profile individuals involved, we haven't necessarily seen the levels of accountability that were promised or the expectation that was created.
No, that's absolutely right. And I think this is the elephant in the room when it comes to assessing the legacy of the Zondo Commission. I've said before that the Zondo Commission was a great victory for our democracy, was a great victory for transparency, but it's potentially a hollow victory if it doesn't result in any accountability. And this is not the first time we've seen this. This has been a kind of legacy of the post-democratic era, going back to the TRC and the way the cases were suppressed after the TRC. We also didn't see the accountability that we would have expected to see for those who didn't come forward or for those who didn't get amnesty. Now, 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line from the start of the Zondo Commission, we have a robust set of findings and recommendations. Many of the recommendations talk about further investigations, but we've seen prominent cases enrolled before the courts. Now it's a question of whether our criminal justice system is capable, is robust enough to now drive these cases for successful prosecutions. We know that the findings against people in the Zondo Commission in and of themselves cannot be presented as evidence sufficient to warrant a criminal arrest. We have a criminal standard of proof. We have beyond a reasonable doubt. We have the presumption of innocence. But what we really want to see now is we want to see successful prosecutions. We want to see money recovered. We want to see implicated persons blacklisted from being able to have positions in government. And similarly, the private sector, we want to see the kind of blacklisting that would be expected from as a result of people being implicated. And we haven't seen that, and I think that's really where there is this sense that the democracy, the rule of law is not on a firm footing, that there is some fragility within the system in terms of the ability of people like the NPA and the police to fully execute their mandates.
Have we been able to elevate at all, Karam, issues of morality, issues of ethics, and the kind of standard that we set for our leaders? Has that happened at all in the last 6-7 years?
That's a complicated question, and you're talking about the state of integrity across the public sector. I mean, I think it's absolutely notable that an institution such as the South African Revenue Service, which was brought to its knees under state capture and the leadership of Tom Moyane, has now recovered, and is now back to executing its mandate in a way that it was previously. That speaks to the integrity of the leadership at SARS. I'm not saying everything at SARS is rosy or perfect, but it's certainly in a much better place than it was 5-10 years ago. Similarly, we can say that there is integrity within the leadership of some of our key institutions, including the NPA. But, across the board, whether we're looking at challenges at municipalities, whether we're looking at challenges at provincial government departments, at state-owned enterprises, we still see these kinds of ethical integrity challenges that you highlight. And I think, this is now requires an all-of-society approach, whether it be from civil society, from the private sector, from those running for office, to say we expect more, we will perform at a higher standard, and the integrity bar needs to be raised, because we're not going to fight corruption effectively just through prosecutions, just through a law enforcement approach. We actually need to focus on leadership, and we need to focus on personal conduct, particularly of public servants.
This idea, Benedict, that came out of yesterday's judgment, that should the court have granted the interdict, it would very much have led to, number one, a failure of the criminal justice system, in that you have suspects that are controlling the justice system. Secondly, that you have suspects, that it would open the floodgates, right? That you would then have a situation where every individual that is a potential suspect in a matter would come out of the woodwork and head to the courts to apply for some kind of relief, to prevent any potential arrest or accountability. Is it fair to look at the step as a step that was done to avoid following due process? Would that be fair comment in the wake of yesterday's judgment? The reason I ask it is because there's so many people who also believe that, well, the Speaker was well within her rights to go to court, and she should be supported.
Hello?
Hello, Benedict?
Sorry, Cathy, I missed you. You cut for a while after you said she should be supported, so I missed the rest of the question.
No, that was it. All right. That was my question.
Yes. So, I think it is a fair assessment to say that what the Speaker had really set in motion was a delay in the processing of her criminal or pending criminal case, right? Because ultimately, when you look at what the outcome that she wanted when she was engaging the NPA was for her lawyer to be present when she was, being processed, but at a particular date, which those dates were not available from the NPA. And when you look at the outcome, she's effectively ended up at that same place. So I think whatever the reasons may have been, certainly delay is probably one of them. And she achieved that because she was never going to achieve a situation where she was going to interdict an arrest, because the NPA, under the Criminal Procedure Act, has a number of mechanisms at which they can secure the attendance of an accused at court, which include arrest. So I think it is a fair assessment to say that the application in itself was intended simply for delay. Why the delay was required and what Mapisa Ngakula needed to arrange or sort out for herself, we don't know. But certainly I would say that, if anything, the outcome that needed to be achieved by her was a sense of delay, and which she did, because when you look at the relief she sought, it was never really on the cards.
Karam, we are now sitting with a situation where the Speaker is still the Speaker. In the next couple of days, she is expected to hand herself over to the Littleton police station, where she will be processed. She will then be given, a court date and have to appear to answer to these potentially 12 charges that will be brought against her. She is still the Speaker. Does this provide some kind of an ethical dilemma? The expectations from political parties that she step down from the position, is that a fair expectation?
I think it is a fair expectation. The charges, as we understand them, are very serious. It's going to subsume the Speaker in terms of dealing with her defense and the processes that she'll have to go through now in terms of bail. We are at the end of the life of this Parliament. We would support the parliamentary process, which evaluates her fitness to hold office. But, I think faced with this type of a situation, particularly where we are at in terms of the life of this Parliament, the appropriate thing to do for the Speaker would be for her to resign, to step aside, to let the law take its course. If she's got all the rights that a criminal defendant will have in terms of defending her case and making the state prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But it's difficult to see how, under these circumstances, she can retain her position with all the responsibilities and everything that comes along with that position. So stepping aside and resigning, I think, would be absolutely appropriate under these circumstances.
All right, we'll continue our conversation in a moment. Benedict Piri stays on the line. Karam Singh, thank you for being part of this conversation. I'll, of course, also take some of the voice notes and calls that you're putting through. It's 11:30.
Good morning, I'm Anne Musa. In the headlines, police are investigating the murder of an ANC councillor in the Nkomazi local municipality in Mpumalanga. Police have identified him as 35-year-old Thabo Ngwenya. Police in KwaZulu-Natal say the property in which 9 suspects were killed in Marion Hill west of Durban was illegally occupied. The 9 suspects were wanted in connection with a series of violent crimes, and 15 suspects arrested in connection with the murders at the University of Forte will today apply for bail in the Dimbaza Magistrates Court in the Eastern Cape. I'll have details on these and other stories at 12.
Hi there, John Carricker here. So I've got a new show, right? It's called The Weekend. It's from 10 to midnight on Saturday and Sunday nights. And it'd be really cool if you could tune in. I'm not really sure what the show's about yet. I know there's going to be some great music, and there's going to be an interview or two, and there's going to be a feature, and we'll do quizzes and, I don't know, other stuff. Still not sure. So maybe I could have some help from you if you have a suggestion for what should be on the show, john@safm.co.za. And tell your friends, please. That would be really cool. And if you could join me between 10 and midnight, Saturday and Sunday night. You probably have other things to do, but trust me, this will be much better than whatever you have planned. And don't forget to tell your friends. Put it into like a diary or a calendar entry or something. Thanks. 10 to midnight, Saturday, Sundays. I'm John Carricker. The show is The Weekend.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
This was the traditional fixture every Easter Monday at a stadium that no longer exists as red and blue did battles.
My world case is the two teams that you're asking about is the now defunct Bloemfontein Celtic and Morocco Swallows. They used to battle out at Cesare Mobutu Stadium in Bloemfontein. Thank you. Bongani.
The traditional Easter Monday fixture was always played at Balfour Park. Balfour Park, the old Balfour Park soccer stadium, which is now a shopping centre. It was the old Highlands Park, of course, who played in red, who were taken over, of course, by Jomo Cosmos. So that was the one side, and Hellenic were indeed the other side. They always used to play on an Easter Monday. The old Highlands Park against Hellenic.
Top Sport on SAFM. Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
Hello, SAFM. My view is that on the Speaker of Parliament, view is that I don't think she is worried about the cases. The only thing that she's trying to avoid is the hammer of step-aside policy that is imposed by her own party. That is what is going to hammer most, because the hammer of step-aside, once the case gets into court, then the step-aside start to operate. That's what he is trying to avoid by all means. It's not that he's afraid of the cases. It's just this step-aside policy is really, hitting it hard.
Good morning, my princess. Good morning, Cathy. Good morning to your team. Great show. Always lovely to hear your voice every day, 9 to 12. Good morning to your guest. Can you ask this analyst, can it be a country whereby people, they get bribes, smiling and enjoying, but when it comes to a certain point that it's backfiring, you reap what you sow, then they give you excuses? What if it was me, Uncle JJ, the truck driver? I steal the load, immediately the police will find me and take me to jail. So what's so special about this Speaker of Parliament? Let her go. This is what she has reaped.
Hello, SAFM. I think on the point of Mrs. Nosfer Mapisa Magula is that he is afraid of a step-aside policy hammer that is going to be imposed after this case. And then it's not that he's running away to hear the matter. It's just that after once it gets into court, the step-aside policy starts to be implemented. Let us just give credit to the ANC that it has finally imposed that step-aside policy. It has done a good thing. They have to be disciplined. The ministers have to be disciplined. The people that are deployed there have to be disciplined. Stay away from corruption. Otherwise, the harm of step-aside policy is coming for you. Give credit to the ANC. Give credit when it is due.
All right, we continue the conversation, taking a closer look at the matter affecting the National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngagula. Benedict Pire is our legal analyst. He's still on the line. Before I go back to Benedict, I want to take a couple of callers. Butana, you're in Rosebank. Good morning.
Good morning, my sister. Good morning, your panelists there.
Yes.
You know, the NPA and the Hawks, they are so hopeless. And I hope they'll prove me wrong this time around. They are so hopeless and they lack credibility. And it gives the impression there's a PR stunt. The speaker has smuggled a person from Burundi. She landed the Guptas in Waterkloof. There's nothing happened to a speaker by then. There are about 100 people that are fingered by Zondo that are going back to parliament. They're going to be lawmakers. And guess what? They are deploying the crooks. Now we have been told that they are going to be professionalized. Tell me, how do you professionalize crook? Tell me that. Which government department is functional now because of crooks that are infected? Those government departments, they've collapsed. All of them. Everything is dysfunctional. I hope the voters can vote right, and you have to start from the scratch and remove the crooks there.
Okay. That's one view. Butana out in Rosebank. Navari in Mbombela, good morning.
Good morning, this is Cathy and your panelists.
Yes.
Good show, as usual. I won't call you the other name because the guests, when we're together, I would only refer you as such, the other name that I normally call you with. I won't be like Budana. I'm not really a pessimist. And I think one of your panelists did indicate that there is a sense of progress in many areas with regard to governance. Particularly with regards to even the NPA itself, the level of credibility is quite coming back. The SARS itself is part of what had been destroyed by state capture. But what I want you to say is that we should agree in principle, therefore, that a lot of work has been done. But the truth is that it's not going to be easy, Casey, to really get things back where they were. But the fact that there's a political will, particularly by the president, I think we should appreciate that accountability and ethical leadership will come to the fore in the long run. I always say to you that a person who's going to come post Ramaphosa as president is going to enjoy a latitude and a laxity of stable institutions, which many of them have been destroyed in the years of state capture. But I think that Speaker of the National Assembly should do the right things. I think the ANC will take cue. And yes,
Navari, why does one still get the sense that even where there are allegations made against individuals, you look at part of what happens in some countries. You look at the UK, right, and Boris Johnson and how he came out of office, breaking lockdown regulations, right, and that was enough for him to come out of office. And we have leaders that are accused of so much worse in some instances, and yet they remain in positions. Do you think that we're going to evolve to a point where we set the bar higher for ourselves?
Look, the fact of the matter is that we are quite a younger democracy, and the culture of accountability has not been entrenched deeply into the minds of individuals, let alone the bigger political parties like the ANC, where you have different characters coming from different backgrounds. But I think that over a period of time, when we intensify a society, and I like this aspect, the problem is that we have demobilized society. We have demobilized community activism to the extent that people assume that political parties carry our future. And I don't think that we must depend on political parties. We must have communities that are ethical. Many of these problems we face, Cathy, are directly related to how communities are structured today. How crime is highly manifested in our areas, how people don't value issues of ethics and morals in their own areas of operations individually. So my point is that I think that the UK, the US, and other areas, they've been matured over a period of time, and the bulk of leadership is quite higher there. In our case, we're still new, but in Africa, generally, they just an issue of patronage that run our politics. People go to government poor and come back rich. It's because we're not mature at that level. But in the long run, I think they will be able to reach a level where ethical leadership defines the lives of South Africans, generally, not only in political parties, in the way, even where we work. And how do you go to work every day? That you have the responsibility, but you don't deliver services. How do you think, as a person, individual, as a character, not only as a political party leader but a person going to work, getting paid every day, but doing nothing about the duties that you are assigned to yourself? I mean, that's also an issue of ethics that we need to discuss moving forward, rather than putting our hopes in the political parties generally. But I think that President Ramaphosa has actually put a bar higher in the ANC. The step-aside rule, really.
All right.
I always been calling for it. You don't need to depend on the ANC. Never said people must go and stay. Many other comrades must go and stand on their own, on the dock.
Okay.
And answer for their own sins, not dragging the ANC into these problems that they've invited for themselves. Thank you very much.
All right, Navari, thanks for that view. Artin Mbombela. Churchill, you're in Mthatha. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Cathy, let me start by the Speaker. I think we must say that the Speaker was within her democratic right to go to court, even though she knew that she did not have a winnable case in interdicting the arrest or the processing, whatever you call it. She achieved what she wanted to achieve, but it was within her democratic rights under the constitution of this country. But I think we must not lose sight of the fact that the challenges that we're facing is because of the political party that is in power. Now, why do I say that? Remember, for instance, to refer to what the latter speakers just said, the ANC started well.
Yes, Churchill? Sorry, we lost you a bit on the line there. Hello, Churchill? All right. It looks like we've lost Churchill on the line. Apologies for that, Churchill. So, Benedict, let me then come back to you. You've heard some of the reflections of our listeners, just more broadly on issues of ethics, morality around leaders. Well within her right, fair enough, but it still doesn't make it a good look.
Yeah, well within her right, Cathy, that's absolutely correct. And it doesn't make it a good look, especially within the broader themes that some of the listeners have been talking about, issues of ethics, morality, governance standards. I think certainly, if you sit in the Johannesburg and Pretoria High Court, about 80% of the cases that go through there have to do with administrative decisions that are taken by political functionaries in carrying out government roles. And the issue is that, the law is not being given regard to and is not being applied in a manner that it should in accordance with the Constitution, right? And that is now leading to issues where, effectively the state is being crippled because if the laws are not being followed and there's a sense that our administrators cannot carry out the law either because they're not sufficiently skilled or because there's other objectives that they want to achieve, I think that hollows out at the democratic project as a whole. So yes, well within her rights, but it certainly makes us ask questions around democratically in South Africa. Are there some people that actually do believe that they may be above the law, and where does that entitlement come from? And I think that's really where, I'm ending up after seeing Mapisa Ngakula's case, because I'm wondering, well, I wonder where the bravery came from, to believe that she'd be entitled to such an outcome that would really set her apart and make her very different to the rest of South Africans who would be processed in a very different manner if they were in a similar position.
It seems that the court was also well aware of this, and this perception of some people being more equal before the law than others. And I guess it's a matter that courts in this country have to contend with, that not only is it a perception, but in many cases a reality, that those who have the means can avoid, whether it's their day in court, avoid accountability, versus those who don't have money to pay for lawyers to exhaust their legal options.
Yeah, and I'm glad that the court was aware of that because, as you'd mentioned earlier in the show, the court was aware that, this would open the floodgates. You'd have a situation where if this type of relief was countenanced, people who are accused of crimes would really run the criminal justice system because they'd be able to bring this preemptive strike before they're even arrested and seek to even get evidence long before the criminal case would have progressed to that stage where the evidence would be shared with the accused at that point in time. And I think the court was well alive to that. And I think it took due consideration of the fact that, a ruling in a different way may have sent the incorrect impression that indeed there are people who can get away with feeling like they are more important than others when it comes to the law. And some of that comes from the fact that they can hire good lawyers, etc. But I think it's good that our courts, I think frequently and more often than not, have actually stood up to this test. Yeah.
Benedict Phiri, we'll leave it there for this morning. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And of course, earlier you also heard from Karam Singh, the Executive Director of Corruption Watch. That brings us to the end of our show on this Wednesday. The Talking Point is back with you again tomorrow morning between 9 and midday. Coming up next is the book reading. Have yourselves a lovely afternoon.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.1 FM in Bombela.
The book reading. Please note the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of Why